in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tech Gig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is Project Management, 180-degree overview. Our guest speaker today is Subhamoy Chakraborty, General Manager IT and BFC. Subhamoy is a technology enthusiast with 10 years of experience in IT business, having worked both on buy side and sell side. Currently, he is working as General Manager IT at a leading NBFC handling strategic technology initiatives. He has also worked with Oracle IDC for Oracle Apps product development, Wipro Technologies for mobility product developments, and Cognizant Technology Solutions for financial services business earlier in his career. Subhamoy has worked extensively on various areas of mobility. He has worked with the major Tier 1 OEMs across the globe in delivering their full phone programs. Currently, he has been managing the enterprise mobility initiatives and taking various initiatives to mobile enable the organization. Subhamoy was identified as one of the top 100 IT leaders in India by IT Next magazine in 2012. Subhamoy is a key follower of the digital and social trends and consults with his experience frequently in various forums on how to build a social business. With his analytical background, he loves to look at the various metrics on how to measure success of business through social KPIs. So without further delay, I introduce you all to a guest speaker. Over to you, Subhamoy.
Hello everyone. So welcome everyone to this session on project management. In this session we will talk about project management as a concept from both client side and vendor side. So without further delay, let's get into the agenda on what we are going to cover in the next 45 to 1 hour. First of all, we will talk about what is a project, that is the traditional definition of the project. Then we will expand it into the enterprise scenarios. We will take a case study on how an organization goes for launching an enterprise app. Then we will talk about the trust factor, which is one of the most important pieces in this art of project management. And then we'll talk about the do's and don'ts before we opening up for a Q&A session. So feel free to share your views, questions throughout the session. We will take them up at the end of the slides, and we'll probably try to learn together and try to gather the collective wisdom. Moving on to the next slide. So we start with the traditional definition of project. What is a project? So if you look at any PMP book or any internet site, you will look at this definition that a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Now we all know this. I mean, whoever has worked on project management to some extent or the other, all are familiar with this definition. And this definition is actually generic enough to cover all sorts of projects. So if you look at the underlined words, those are quite generic. You can define any project under the sun to be covered under this PMP definition. Now look at this picture. So this picture is of a bunch of young fellows who are planning to lighten up one busy street in Kolkata during Christmas. Now if you look at the definition above, this is also a project because this is a temporary endeavor. This is trying to create a unique service, and this has an end. So after end of the year, these lights will be taken out. But while you are looking at the picture for the first time, did you realize that those three guys, one of them probably would be a project manager? So I mean, that is the catch. That when we talk about project management, we talk about the IT initiatives, we talk about the IT projects in general. but project management goes much more beyond that. So we'll, to get into that, first we'll try to understand what is the difference between an end user organization and an IT organization. Most of the participants, as I found, that are from the IT industry, IT service vendor companies. So it will be probably good to know what is the difference between a so-called client organization and a software vendor organization. If you look at any software vendor organization, their business is to deliver software as the end product. So they are developing some piece of software or service or product, but the companies they are catering to, they have different end products to deliver. For example, if you look at a pharmaceutical company, their end goal is to sell drugs, medicines. If you look at a financial organization, their end goal is to sell loans. In such kind of end user organizations, like say in a financial company or a pharmaceutical company or a FMCG, there are various types of projects that are regularly taken up, and there are very few of them which require actually IT involvement. For example, suppose in a financial company, someday they decide to start a new line of business. Now that's also a project. So it will require doing some competitive analysis. It will require doing some strength, weakness, opportunity, threat, that is SWOT analysis. They will do some cost-benefit analysis, find the right channels, and as part of this, they may require some system software. I mean, some application software or system software, whichever we talk about. So if you look at that, project management from a business perspective will cover all these aspects, starting from definition of business, identification of customer, channels, and cost-benefit analysis, including the software piece. Now again, take up another example. Suppose some business organizations, they take up certain quality initiatives around Lean and Six Sigma. So the aim is to identify the steps in the current as-is process and then define the wastages where we are spending more time than expected. And as an outcome, they define a to-be process. Again, that's a project, and that requires a project management in place. You may also think of an infrastructure project where an end user organization or any organization may require to revamp the entire IT infrastructure. When you say IT infrastructure, it talks about the server, it talks about network, it talks about database, it talks about IT equipment. So that's also a project because that is resulting in a unique service that has an end. So when you say project management, again, this also requires project management. And in all these three cases, like we talked about a business initiative, a Lean Six Sigma, and an infrastructure project, we are not talking about software. They may require some software, but software is not the end goal of it. But all of them are considered as projects in business. So at the end of this slide, what we want to drive is the takeaway is project management is not only about software developers and their managers. It's much more beyond that. To explain it further, what we will do is we will look at a typical client organization. When we say client, it's an end user organization. It can be a financial organization, it can be FMCG, or it can be something else. So this is a typical organization where it starts from the managing director at the top. There will be first line of guys where there will be a business head, business 1, business 2, so 2 business heads probably. There will be a marketing head, which will be chief marketing officer. There will be a chief sales officer, chief HR head, chief audit officer, and CIO. Under CIO, there will be a couple of more second line guys who will be someone will be handling the projects, someone will be handling operations, daily operations, network, security, and all this stuff. So this CIO is actually involved not only on the project. So when we look at bottom up, when we talk about a single project, we only think about the projects, but CIO is involved in all these IT initiatives. It's daily operations, it's network, it's security, it's infrastructure. So if you're a software vendor who is working on an enterprise project, possibly you are talking to someone who is on the green box, that is the project box. But why this understanding of this chart is important? I mean, when you are working with your client, why do you need to understand this chart in detail? Because it will help you to identify who all the stakeholders are. So for example, if it's a business initiative which requires some marketing, then all the brown boxes are the stakeholders. And you need to keep that in mind when you do any communication, when you do any status, because finally the project has to cater to all the stakeholders. And in the IT department, there will be these operations, networks and security guys and infrastructure guys. They are also equally stakeholders. Now, this is also important in another aspect. Sometimes it happens that the project manager from the vendor organization keeps talking with the project's head. But the project head is only concerned about the software part of it. And the other departments like say infrastructure, he might be looking for some infrastructure revamp. So you are losing money on the table. So if you can hook on to the right guys from your company to that guy, then you are extending business. So to get business, to sustain business, to make the project successful, it's important that you identify the stakeholders. So the takeaway from this slide is please identify the stakeholders of your organization through the org chart. Next, we get into a typical vendor organization, like a software vendor who develops software for end users. Now, this can be very different from this also. I mean, whatever is depicted is an example only. There can be organizations who are totally focused as a vertical organization. So there will be only verticals who will be reporting to the CEO. Or there can be organizations which can be a mix of vertical and horizontal. Or there can be organizations which is a mix of these. So what is depicted here. Why is it important to understand this? So let's first look at this structure. It starts with sales and delivery guys. Now sales probably have two geographical heads, and delivery will have vertical heads around domains. Suppose someone is looking at BFSI, someone is looking at FMCG, someone is looking at pharma. Under vertical head, there can be a delivery head, account manager, and then finally the poor guy, the project manager. So again, if you are talking about a specific project, then probably you think that the project manager is a CEO and he is a single point of contact. But if you look at the broader perspective, when a customer is talking to your organization, he is looking for someone who can take a call at say sales level or delivery level or both. So guys who are marked in brown, they are also stakeholders here. Now those who are in business for a longer time, they know how a software business happens. So there will be a sales guy who will be going there and probably overselling his product or service. Then there will be a pre-sales guy who will follow the sales pitch, and then the poor delivery guys who has to live up to the pitch. The problem is once the sale is done, sales guys mostly lose interest in the project. Then the delivery guys are anyway, and they are not really incentivized on this particular project. But whatever billing they get, they are happy. So end result is there is no single point of contact who is responsible in this organization, or to put it in a different way, there is no single person whose neck is on the line for the success or failure of the project. So that's a very bad scenario in terms of customer satisfaction, because customer is looking for someone who he can talk to and who can internally take care of his concerns, who can go to sales if required, who can go to delivery, who can go to anywhere in the world, but who can talk to the right guys and find out the solution. So if we look at the takeaway from this slide, first takeaway is define the single point of contact. If you don't know who is the single point of contact, ask your supervisor. If you are project manager, talk to your supervisor, probably account manager. You can talk to your delivery head. And remember, this should help you during the tough days of the project. Suppose you need to involve sales going forward at some stage for some negotiation. Then finding that single point of contact will help you. Also, there is a common concept in project that people call project manager as the CEO of the project. But I mean, you should note that project manager has capability and responsibility that is limited only to the scope of the project. He can't go beyond that. His circle of influence only ends into the project itself. And there is a second takeaway. Keep sales in loop for all the discussions whenever you are discussing commercials. This will help you later, because finally sales guys are the best guys to talk about commercials. Don't get involved into that. That may make issues later on. Now that we understand how a client organization works and how a vendor organization works, we will look at a typical case study. This is a real case study anyway, where our apparently simple mobile application is getting developed for a corporate, and that's an enterprise application which will be developed for the users of this company. So let's see how this project gets defined at the client end, where the vendors get involved, and how the project is made successful. So the project starts with identifying the business problem and the need of the project. This can come from the current problem statement. This can come from doing some Lean Six Sigma or quality initiative where you look at the as-is process, you define the to-be process, or it can come through some external stimulus also. But here, please note that the stakeholder is business. So if you remember in the org chart, there was a business head who was reporting to the MD. So this is part of that vertical. That business guy is owner up to this. He is defining the business problem. He is doing the cost benefit analysis. He is trying to see whether this will make any sense in doing the project. Next comes the IT guy. So the IT guy means the CIO and his team will start getting involved after the business requirement is identified. So he will do the vendor selection. Probably 4 and 5 can either way come. So 5 may come earlier than 4. So the IT guy will look at all the vendors who are on the whitelist. He will rate the vendors based on their criteria, like how they have done earlier, what are the frequencies and all these things. Then they will come out with a budget. So this budget will not only include the software part, it will also include the other pieces, like suppose it's a mobile project, then you need to procure devices. So that is also part of the cost. So you need to revamp the network. That is also part of the cost. You need to buy some SIM cards. Again, that is also part of the budget. So once you develop this entire budget, it goes to the business head, because the cost. So remember that the IT department in an end user organization doesn't hold the budget. The budget comes from the business guys. So business guys have defined the problem statement. IT guy comes in. He decides, okay, this is the vendor. This is a perfect fitment. This product can go. This service can go. And he defines the minimum possible cost. Then he sends that cost for approval to the business head. It may finally go to the MD also for approval, depending on the approval structure, approval hierarchy. After all this is done, after approval is done, then only we are talking about the software requirement, which is point 6. So SRS discussion starts. Now, if you are a sales guy or if you are a pre-sales guy, possibly you are already involved in this organization and you are getting some hints that, okay, we are getting a project, we are trying to work on something. But you may not get any concrete response till number 4 or number 5 is identified. So you may get a feeling that, okay, I am pitching my sales pitch every day. I am going to the CIO, I am going to the project manager in client organization, but nobody is reverting back. So what's happening? This is the reason. I mean, they have not yet decided. They have not yet finalized the business problem. Probably they have not got the approval yet. Only after those things has happened, then only the SRS sign-off starts and the software life cycle starts. Then start the software design and development. So if you are a software vendor, if you are say a mobile app vendor, then you are only there at 6 and 7. So the project life cycle, whatever project development life cycle that we read in the project management manuals and elsewhere, that is talking about 6 and 7. But for the client project manager, it doesn't end on 6 and 7. 6 and 7 only part of that long list. He has to finalize the devices. What device has to be given to the sales guys or whoever is going to use that. He has to finalize the data connectivity plan. I mean, what SIM has to be procured, what is the monthly data plan, what is the renewal plan. He has to go to the server requirement. So what is the data usage plan? How much data needs to be retained? So these questions will come to you as a software vendor that please provide the data retention plan. Are you going to retain the images? Are you going to retain these files? When are you going to archive? All these leads to the server procurement plan. Then another important piece is security. So suppose you are introducing something on the internet, then somebody has to look at it from security perspective, whether that is going to be in DMZ, that is going to be in internal LAN, how is it going to, how the network is going to look like. So if you look at the slide now, I have talked about multiple vendors. First box is about the app project. This is the IT software vendor who is developing the application. Then there is other vendor who will be providing the mobile device or other devices. There will be another vendor who will be talking about the security setup. The other vendors will talk about infrastructure. Somebody will talk about data plan. Somebody will talk about network. All these things together will define the IT plan. Now after all these things are done, everything is in place, and you can stitch all the pieces together. Then you go for UAT. So what happens in UAT? So the software was built at development platform. He comes here in this new platform, which has a completely new device setup, a completely new network setup, altogether new network plan, and the software fails. So this is the reason, because you are getting only the view of the green box, that is the app project box. You are not getting view of the other boxes till you come for the UAT. And the client project manager has to manage till 13, number 13, where it goes after UAT, it goes for user training, and then it goes for rollout and operations. So why operations is important? Once a project is completed, project ends into the, the rollout is the end of the project. Once you get to the end of the deliverable, you give it to the client, he rolls it out, the user starts using it. Then it moves into the operations phase, where you will be managing the daily issues, you will be managing the daily bugs, logs, and all these things. That will get into operations phase. So why is it important to understand this entire big picture? The takeaway of this slide is learn the big picture, but why is it important? It's important because sometimes the application development project manager thinks that, okay, my project is slipping for say 1 week or so. How is it going to impact the project? Possibly it's only a matter of 1 week. So what is the big deal about that? But if you look at this long list now, we will realize that your 1 week delay may impact the entire list, and it may impact the entire rollout plan. Because all these guys, all these vendors are having dependencies on each other. So when your client manager is shouting at you for a 1 week slip, so this is the reason behind that. This is the big picture that he is handling, and that application project is one piece on it. So he's concerned on that because it's stitching and it's impacting his entire rollout plan. Now that we know that how a project works in a client organization, how an enterprise app is rolled out, let's look at this picture and find out who is the client and who is the vendor. So you may identify that the man standing tall is Muhammad Ali. What do you think? I mean, who is the client? Is client standing tall or is client lying on the floor? So the catch is we are not in a fight. It's not about a duel. It's about working together. And you need to make sure that your counterpart, so if you're a client manager, then you need to make sure that your vendor manager is knowing this. And if you're a vendor manager, then you need to make sure that your client manager understands that this is not about a fight. And we need to come to a win-win situation. So this project is not about show-off, it's about solving a business problem. And the stakes are at very senior level. So people are depending on you for solving possibly a typical business problem. It's not about proving who is right or who is wrong, who knows more or who knows, who is right. So that is not the point. You can only be successful if the project is successful, and you need to remember the big picture. It's going to be successful if you make the project successful, and there are so many variables, some of which probably are outside your circle of influence. You can't influence some of the things, like if you're a software project manager, you can't influence when a SIM card is going to be delivered. It may impact the entire rollout plan. But if you understand the big picture, then you know that your delay can impact something else, and you can sensitize your team members accordingly. So we know that we need to reach to a win-win situation. We know that it's a big project. It's a multi-variable problem. But how do we achieve that? So based on the experience that we have gained over the years, the biggest learning that I have received so far is trust is the biggest glue factor. You won't it won't be taught in your project management classrooms or PMP courses, but this is what makes a project succeed or fail. So when the trust factor goes missing, it leads to complete failure of communication channels. People stop believing others' words, and they start documenting everything in mail. So people start to deliver a project over mail, but that doesn't happen, right? Finally you need to deliver what needs to be delivered. It's not an email fight. And it leads to a huge wastage of effort in finding the faults and defending yourself. Also, it leads to frequent escalation. So it goes to your boss, your boss's boss, your super boss, and all these guys. But that doesn't deliver anything. So how to build the trust factor? Trust factor is something very fuzzy. You can't define, you can't put it in a metric that, okay, we have 95% trust factor in this project, so we are doing great. We can't do that. But we'll talk about some do's and don'ts, which might help you to understand that what needs to be done and what must be avoided in building a trust factor, in building a good environment where we can deliver a project successfully. This is a simple slide. It talks about plan, track, talk, and succeed. Those who have gone through PMP courses, or those who have gone through any project management courses, leave aside PMP courses, they might know that there is a concept called PDCA, plan, do, check, act. So we just modified it a bit, and we made it plan, track, talk, and succeed. And here, if you definitely you have noticed that the talk, the font size is much bigger than plan, track, and succeed, because communication is the most important factor in project management. I was told in some project management session some years back that if you are not spending 80% of your time in communication, then you are possibly not doing things rightly. And later I realized that it's so right. Communication is going to be the most critical factor. As a project manager, you are not developing any software. You are possibly not testing anything. You are communicating with others. If you remember the org structure, there are so many stakeholders at client organization as well as in the vendor organization. So if you're a vendor project manager, suppose you are an IT software development company and you are the project manager of a big project, we have those many stakeholders who are involved in the project. And to make a project successful, you need to listen to them, you need to understand what they want, and possibly you need to deliver all those things. Plan. Why plan is important? So I mean, possibly this is a no-brainer that you need to plan. But we have seen so many projects fail just because it was not planned. It is not necessary that you need to plan it in a MPP, or you need to put it in an Excel in a very nice looking format. That's not important. What is important is you know what needs to be done by whom and who is depending on whom. If you can define that at the beginning of the project, so you can't define the plan at the beginning of the project till the end of the project. It's going to be evolved over the time. So when you start the project, possibly you have a visibility for the next 3 months, but you don't know what will happen after the requirement. So how would the steps be there on the design phase? Or when you are on design, possibly you are trying to figure out how you will make iterative plans on the development part. But it's important that the big picture is there. Unless you have the big picture, unless you have the plan, you can't instill confidence in on the client project manager. Client project manager is, as you saw, he is looking at the big picture. He needs a dependency to be delivered in the right time. So if he doesn't understand, if he doesn't get the big picture that okay, this project starts on XYZ date and ends on something XYZ plus 16 months, 18 months, 20 months, and these are the intermediate deliverables when I'm going to get that. For this, I need to support in this fashion. Then only he is going to be comfortable. So please do plan. Please create a plan, even if it's not on MPP, even if it's not on Excel, but create a plan. Second important point is tracking. So possibly if you're a developer or if you're a project lead, you might be irritated when your project manager asks for the tracking sheet. So what is going on? What is the current status and all? But remember, that is very important. But because finally, it's kind of a company that you are running. This project is a mini company. You are given some resources, you are given some funding, and you need to deliver something out of that. So unless you track, unless you know that where you stand right now, you can't reach the final goal. So it happens that in the WSR or the monthly status meetings, client project manager possibly asks that, what is the percentage you have achieved in last 1 week? And the vendor project manager puts a blank. But that shouldn't be the case. You should have on your fingertip that where you are, how far you need to go, and what it takes to reach there. That is what is about plan and tracking. And if you can do the plan and tracking along with communications properly, you can make a project successful. So the takeaway from this slide is WSR and MSR are important and they are necessary. So we'll also talk about a case study. Talk about a case study from my personal experience where we found how WSR is so important in making a project successful or saving your job possibly also. So this project is about a fixed price project which we did for a networking company. Let's call this company C for Calcutta. We are not taking the full name. Let's say C. So this C company was supposed to do some tweaking on a mobile platform of a software giant called M. M for say Mango. Again, we are not taking the name. C had a dependency on getting a build from M so that we can integrate our solution. But unfortunately, we are not getting enough response from this company called M. We are going through the company called C, who was a direct client, but still we are not getting enough response from M. We documented each weekly call in WSS, and we were discussing with the customer a point of contact. So that time I was on the other side of the table. I was the vendor project manager. I was talking with the client project manager every week, and it was documented really. After some time, we found that the revenue leakage was more than expected, because we are not delivering something because of dependency, but our resources are getting consumed. So at that point of time, we discussed with the customer C and told them that we are going to reduce the resource count, because otherwise we may run out of funds. So we started working on a reduced resource count. We continued for a few months, but still, I mean, even if it's a smaller leakage, but still the leakage was continuing. And at some stage, we had to go to the senior management of the company C to tell them that we are running in red because of the dependency, and that is something which is not in our control. Now remember, at the beginning of the case study, I told you that it's a fixed price project. So if you know, I mean, if you have worked in project management, you must be knowing that in fixed price project, you don't bill a customer based on the effort that you have put. You bill a customer based on the work that you have created, the deliverable you have created. So in this case, we are not able to produce anything which can be sent to customer, which can be shared with the customer, which can be used by the customer. So that way, we are not achieving anything, but we are having revenue leakage all throughout. So after 8 months of this continuous leakage, we went to the senior management of the company C and convinced the management of our company as well as the client company that, see, this is what is happening. This is not because of our fault. This is because the dependency on the company M that we incurred this cost, and we have been keeping you on loop. We have been communicating with you regularly. So what needs to be done? So finally the project was scrapped, but note that we got all the money for the effort we had put in. If you look at, as I said, if you look at any FP project, it's very difficult to get a payment based only on effort if you are not delivering the end product. But here we got the revenue that we had spent. We got the whatever resource cost that we had spent, and this was possible only because of communication, because we did the WSR regularly. We kept the client in loop every day, every week, and that way they couldn't deny that, okay, this is not because of the vendor's fault, this is because of somebody else's fault, so let's not penalize them. So we move to the next slide. We talked about do's. Now let's talk about don'ts. So it starts with vendor, but don't worry, there is a customer side also. So it has to be, as we said, that it has to be a joint phenomena. On the vendor side, the first point is don't overcommit. That's a typical problem for any software development project. And if you're in the industry for long enough, you know the typical cycle. The sales guy goes, he starts pitching to the customer. He has a great product, he has a great solution or service or whatever. But he's having a view of an astronaut to the problem statement. He doesn't know what customer wants, but he knows what he has with him. So he is selling his product like anything. After sales is done, then comes the pre-sales guy. He joins in and he creates a proof of concept, and he understands the business problem to some extent. But still, at this point of time, possibly he is having a 50,000 feet view. He is still not at the ground level. He doesn't know what exact nitty-gritties that is involved in this project. But he is going for the proof of concept. What comes next? Comes next the proposal. So vendor and customer will agree on the RFP. They will decide, okay, this is what we need. And nobody has looked into the nitty-gritties of the project yet, but they are happily signing a proposal now. So the vendor comes with a proposal and they are fighting together. After some time they agree. Something in between, a contract gets signed. After that comes a poor guy called delivery. So this delivery team, once they get involved, they possibly find that, okay, there is an issue in the estimation and this is not going to work out. But by this time, there is already a relationship between these two companies, and possibly what is happening is, okay, so what is happening, sorry, I was interrupted by something else. So what is happening is he is already having a relationship with his company and he can't come out of the project. So he is continuing for some time, possibly 4, 5, 6 months. And after that, he finds out that, okay, this is not going to work out. And that's an issue. Because as a project manager, you must realize that not everything is going to be in your control. And if something outside your circle of influence is causing a project failure, then all the stakeholders need to be alerted in time. So, I mean, it's not only going to save your project, it may save your job as well. Next point is keep customer in loop. We talked about that case study where we had kept the customer in loop and got lucky. So it's important that you are communicating with the customer, you are keeping the customer in loop. The third point is it's not about show off of your latest learning. Sometimes on the vendor side, when we are sitting on the vendor side, we become too eager to show off what all we have learned newly, and we try to implement that. But please remember that it's a business problem. It's not a technical show off kind of thing. So we need to solve the business problem in a most efficient fashion. And the fourth important point is don't assume, ask. So this is a very basic principle, but this is violated most of the time. So vendor comes and he assumes that, okay, the user types will be only 3. I don't need to create something for that. But if you would have asked, then possibly you would have understood that there are 10 different types of users who is going to use this application. So please ask the vendor, please ask the customer project manager. He is happy to help you, but don't assume anything without asking. And the last but most important point is you know technology better than the customer. I mean, that is why you are in the deal. So the software vendor is into the deal mostly because he understands what it takes to deliver the project. Now, if we look at the other side of the table, that is the customer view. So what is happening there? I mean, what can go wrong? First of all, don't execute a deal which appears too good to be true. Sometimes what happens is, as we talked about that overselling pitch and all, the people come out with a deal which cannot be delivered. The vendor comes out with a deal which you can just look at that and you can find out, okay, this is not going to work out. So leave that. That is the point. Don't pursue a deal because you find that, okay, that's fantastic. It's something which no vendor has offered. So look at a couple of offers and find out a comparative and see whether that is a doable thing. Otherwise, don't go for the deal. Second point is vendor is not a Superman. So that's a basic misnomer. People sometimes think that, okay, I have hired the best of the class vendor, so he is going to solve all my business problems. But that may not be the case. I mean, we are all human beings, and they are also people like us who probably know code better than us. So that's why they are on that side. But don't assume they know everything. And third point is don't force the vendor in a loss-making deal. So that happens during negotiation. During negotiation, sometimes the client organization pushes too hard. They say that, okay, I can't go with this deal unless you make it sweeter, unless you give more discounts and all. But finally, the vendor organization also needs to make a business case. So don't push too hard. Don't make a loss-making deal. That will impact your quality. Finally, if you look at the golden triangle, I mean, whoever is in project management, he knows what golden triangle is. It's about time, cost, and scope. If you squeeze time, it's going to impact scope and cost. If you're going to squeeze or increase scope, then again it has impact on time and cost. If you squeeze cost, it's going to have impact on time and scope. And if you're not doing anything about them, it's going to impact the quality. So that's about golden triangle. So keep in mind that golden triangle is true everywhere. You can't make a project which is going to happen in lesser time, in lesser cost, with higher scope, with the best quality. That's not going to happen. And the last point, which is important for the vendor, for the customer project manager, you know business better than vendor. I mean, you are into business every day. So you must realize that a vendor cannot match the domain knowledge on any day. I mean, we talk about domain knowledge, but what is domain knowledge? We talk about domain knowledge in various contexts. But domain knowledge is something that the vendor acquires over time. They acquire it by doing some projects. But as a customer, you know your business better than anyone else. So a business analyst can come to you, ask a few questions. He can understand that, he can convert that into an automated system, but finally, he can't match you on the business knowledge. Keep that in mind. So with that point, we come to the end of the slides. What we'll do is we'll take a few questions, and if you have more questions, please send it to the moderator. We'll take up the questions accordingly.
I've already
The first
sent.
question is from Ashish. Yeah, I am looking at that.
Yeah, the questions are there in a questions window.
Yeah. The first question is from Ashish Benwal. His question is, what are the best practices for doing budget estimation? The first best practice is, most of the time what happens is people miss out items. I mean, that is the biggest problem. So we talked about a mobile app development project. Suppose I need to do a budget planning for that mobile development project. So what all needs to be considered? You start with the software development piece, then you find out, okay, I need some hardware, I need some storage, we may need some network, we need some security solutions. So understand the business problem, and if you're a customer project manager, interact with the vendor project manager. You can understand that what are the dependencies he is having. Sometimes what happens is the vendor project manager might be having something in his mind. Suppose you need some storage which needs to be calculated. Suppose it needs to be per user per month basis. Then you have to get that information out of him. That is the basic principle. Like, you need to involve all the vendors and you need to come out with the budget. Also, sometimes people talk about buffers, like you could keep a buffer and then get the budget approved so that you are not in soup later. But that's not something which is a best practice or not something ethical. So people practice it very often, that you put a buffer, you put a 10% buffer. So look at all the alternatives, look at all the requirements, and then go for the budget approval. We go to the second question. This is from Sunita. Can you please make more clarifications on UAT? Okay. So UAT, possibly I didn't spell out the full form of UAT. UAT is user acceptance testing. So when you have built your software or whatever, your service, then you finally come out with that to the customer. Customer has to certify that, okay, this is as per my requirement, this is as per my specification that I have spelled out in the beginning. How does the customer check that? So what he should ideally do is he should look at the SRS or the requirement specification and build couple of test cases around that, and then he should go through those test cases and say that, okay, this is passed, this is failed, this is passed, this is failed. Out of that, if there are any critical issues, then this is a no-go. If it's okay, and based on the criticality, based on severity, they make a decision. Okay, I will go for this software, I will go for rollout, or I will stall this before these bugs are fixed. So that is about UAT. UAT is very important in a project, because finally the project, when it goes out of the development server to the production server, it impacts all the users. Before that, you need to ensure that whatever requirements have been given are met. As a customer project manager, it's more of a responsibility of the customer project manager than the vendor project manager. The customer project manager must ensure that whatever requirement he had given have been delivered by the software project manager. After rollout, you can't say that, okay, I had given you this requirement, but look at this, it's not happening in the right way. So that is not going to be acceptable. Next question is from Shubham Singh. how do operations activity differ from project management activity? So if you have worked in any end user organization or any customer organization, so to say, you will easily understand what is so different between operations and project management, project activity. Project is something which has a definite end. Suppose you are building an ERP application for a customer. So that's a project. You have a requirement phase, you have a design phase, you have a software implementation phase, you have a customization phase, and then there is a rollout. Once that rollout happens, then it's being used by millions of users or hundreds of users based on your customer. They will be having issues daily. Possibly they will be having some issues on the software itself. They can have issues on the training, like they were not trained properly. They may have issues on the network. Suppose that application has gone too heavy, so the network is becoming slow. Or they may have some other issues. So that is about operations. The daily operations will look at all these issues. He will route these issues to the project team if required. So suppose some of the issues are particular to the software. So if there are some bugs into that, so he will route that to the software team. But otherwise he will try to resolve the other issues. That is the difference between operations and project. So if you look at the PMP book or any project management book, you will find the basic difference between project and operations is mentioned as project has an end, operations is something ongoing. Next question is from Vishal Agrawal. The question is, what planning should include? Is planning only about the schedule and dates? Okay, the simple answer is no, it's not about that. Planning has multiple phases. Planning needs, so I don't want to repeat what is there in PMP, but I'll just give you some idea. You can refer to the PM book and get some idea like what all needs to be included. Suppose you are a customer project, so you are a vendor project manager and you are doing planning for your project. So you need to plan for the resources who all needs to work in this project. You need to plan for the communication, like when and who needs to be involved in the communication. Do you need to send WSI to project manager only, or program manager also needs to be involved? So there are various planning phases involved. It's not only about schedule and date. That is just one part of it. Next question is from Sunita. What are the main documents created while entire development and maintenance? During development, it depends on the project. Like you define the deliverables, what all deliverables needs to be shared with the customer. It can start from the SRS, which is the software requirement document. Software requirement document can have multiple deliverables, like it can, depending on the methodology that you are using, it can be the use case flow document, it can be functional software specification document. Then on the design, you may define the deliverables as the HLD and LLD, the high level design document and low level design document. On the code delivery part, obviously you will have the binary and source. But what I want to convey that it's specific to the project. You can't define that these are the generic documents that has to be delivered during development and maintenance. It's about that project. As a client project manager and vendor project manager, together you need to work out during proposal itself that what needs to be delivered at what phase. Next question is from Vishal. What should be done when discovery goes wrong and what comes out much more than what was discovered, resulting more cost for vendor and less revenue? So this is what I was trying to discuss during the presentation. This is a typical scenario in many projects where people find out after the proposal is signed, contract is signed, that the effort that is required is much higher than what was estimated. So you need to talk. So what is important is communication. You need to talk internally whether the cost is going to be consumed by the vendor himself So it depends on the scale. Suppose you are talking about a 15% cost deviation, then possibly you have already built buffer on that. You will consume as a vendor organization. You don't want to spoil the relationship with the customer, and you will consume that. But if it goes much more beyond that, then you need to talk to the customer. You need to work out on how best that can be handled. I mean, there are various ways. You can go for cost negotiation is the last phase of it. You can go look for the solutioning part of it. How can it be developed in a different way? You can look at open source solutions. Suppose you are doing licensed software, and licensed software obviously has high overhead, but it can be delivered using open source, then why don't you go for open source? So there are various options. The project manager is supposed to look at those options and come out with that list and go to the customer and say that, okay, here we go. If we go for this path, this is the cost you need to bear. If we go for that path, this is the cost that we need to bear. And then come to a win-win situation. Finally, what is important is the business problem has to be solved in time. Next question is from Manikya Mishra. How important is it to manage customer expectation? And what is the most effective way to do it when project not progressing well? So let's be honest, when project is not progressing, then you are not doing right things. And if you are not doing right things, then you are not anyway meeting customer expectation. So there is no black magic, or there is no magic wand where by which you can satisfy a customer without delivering anything. So that's not going to work. If you are not able to deliver because of some blockage, some dependency on the customer, talk to him. But if it's something internal, then you need to work that out. And you can't achieve customer expectation without delivering what needs to be delivered. Next question is from Rajesh Kumar. Please explain kickoff meeting and content of the kickoff meeting. So kickoff meeting is okay. That's a name given to any start-off meeting where you assemble all the guys involved, all the stakeholders involved, and then you brief the team that, okay, this is what needs to be delivered in this time. This is what the customer expects. This is what are the dependencies. So that is about kickoff meeting. It's about setting the goal. It's about looking ahead in time and see what is in store in future, what needs to be done from, I mean, what is expected from the team. So that is about kickoff meeting. Next question is from Muhammad Bilal. How do we calculate the budget for any project? What all factors we need to consider while calculating budget? Now, you have not mentioned whether you are a customer organization or you are a vendor organization. Suppose we assume that you are a vendor organization. In that case, when you calculate the budget for a project, the major cost comes from the resources. So you need to find out what is the resource cost that is going to be involved in developing the software. Next piece will be on the license part. So suppose you are using some licensed software, even if it's Microsoft Office or Microsoft Project Plan, that also has a cost involved. So you need to budget that as well. Then depending on your organization, some organization charge a cost for the seat. So whatever the seating capacity, for that you need to put a cost factor on that. So all this needs to be kept in mind to define the budget for a project for a vendor organization. For a customer organization, anyway, we talked about that in a previous question. Next question is from Srinivasulu Tagala. Okay, the question is, what are ways to hand over the project to BAU? Which documents need to be made ready, and what actions needs to be done? So you have not explained what is BAU. I assume that that's the operations team you are talking about. So what happens is, generally, I mean, what is the point of failure is, the project team says that, okay, my project is done, rollout is done, and now tata bye bye, I am going out, let the operations take it up. But there needs to be some handholding. So generally what best practice says that you should have at least some sort of handoff period where both the teams work together. They create a manual based on the steps. So that is the operational document that they create at that point of time. It will have the steps of the software, it will have the common issues, it will have the FAQs, which will be referenced during any issue resolution. Next question is from Manish Varma. How to ensure SLA compliance as part of project management practice? So SLA is something which is very intrinsic to the project. Suppose you are on the operation cycle right now. SLA mostly involves during the maintenance projects or during the operations phase of the project. There is again no black magic. I mean, you have to put the right people in right place. You have to make the SLA in terms of finding out what all it takes to deliver that. And if there are dependencies, raise that. Most of the time what happens is if you find some dependency, you don't share it with the customer or you don't share it internally, and possibly you keep it with you. So that is what blocks the project progress. Next question is from Shubham again. Is project management vertical viable? How about I take operations vertical and do project management certification? If not, why so? I am not very clear about the question. What I can understand that possibly you are working on the operations side and you want to do project management and you want to understand whether that is required or that is going to help you. It's definitely going to help you. Project management, as we said, it's not about developing a software. It's not about developing or delivering a service. It's much more beyond that. So anyone who is in the industry, who is managing something tangible, who is managing something deliverable, he should learn the basics of project management, even if he is on the side of business or on the side of the vendor. Project management is something you must learn. Next question is from Sunita. What are the main differences between development and production environment? So the basic difference is obviously development environment, people generally make it a smaller box. They keep lower specification like lower memory, lower hard disk and all. Possibly the network configuration is also not as per the production environment. And the production environment obviously is like it's going to be accessible to all the users. So what happens is people do all the testing on the development, and then when they jump into the production, they find out some issues because of dependencies on the other things. There can be dependencies on network, like it's not having enough bandwidth, or it may be due to storage because we didn't test with all the files. So these are the possible issues that comes during development to production transition. Next question is from Sunil. In budgeting, do you also factor infrastructure costs, that is PCs or equipment allocated to software developers? Here I am talking about existing PCs or equipment and not the newer ones. It depends on the organization, and I have seen organizations where they do charge for the existing PC also. So if you have some understanding of finance, every device has a depreciation factor. Suppose it's an IT equipment, it also will have some depreciation factor. It can be linear, it can be something else. Generally, IT equipment has a much steeper depreciation factor. I mean, it depreciates faster than other things. But still, there may remain some costs which needs to be involved into this project. So when you are doing budgeting, better you talk to your finance guy in your company and find out whether you need to include that or whether it's already part of some common head. So it depends on organization. Next question is from Ramesh. Which approach is better for projects, fixed price or P&L? So that's a very interesting question. It depends on which side you are in. Suppose you are on the customer side, then you will always prefer a fixed price project. And if you are on a vendor side, then you will always prefer a T&M project. Why is it so? In a fixed price project, the risk is on the vendor. because vendor is committing what needs to be done, and he is committing the cost also, and he is committing it very early in the project life cycle. So suppose during the contract phase itself, he is committing that I will take XYZ amount to deliver these things by this time. He doesn't know about the eventualities, he doesn't know about the variable that is going to come during the project life cycle, but he is committing that. Customer will be happy with that because customer knows what is the cost going to be involved. It can be capex or opex, but he knows what is the revenue outgo. Now look at a T&M project. Why vendors prefer a T&M project? Because vendors are then built on the actual. So whatever it takes, if it's a complex project, I put more skilled resources, I put more possibly senior resources at 5 to 10 years of experience, and I bill accordingly. The customer may not like to accept a T&M project because customer doesn't know what it takes to develop this. So he might be given an idea, okay, you need 500 person months or 1000 person month to develop this project, and after 6 months you are told that okay, it's not 500, it's going to be 750, so your cost gets doubled. So that's the issue. Now if you are in a negotiation, possibly if you are a vendor, you will push for T&M. If you are a client, you will push for fixed price. And mostly these days people are going for fixed price. Even there are other models like say where people share the revenue. So it's not only fixed price and T&M, there are other project models as well. The next question is, what is the important challenge project manager has to face? Question is from Srinivas. The most important challenge for project manager is, what I have found out from my experience is, he has to get things delivered without doing anything on his own. So he has to depend on his developers. He has for doing the software part. He has to depend on the testing team for testing it out, and he has to depend on the quality team to ensure that software is of proper quality. He has to depend on his supervisor in getting the proper resources allocated. Suppose you are handed over a project and you are not given good resources, then you can't deliver. So your dependency is on multiple stakeholders, I mean on multiple guys. You have dependency on your supervisor, on your resourcing team, on your developers, on your testing team, and many of them don't report to you directly. Obviously your boss don't report to you directly, forget about that. Even possibly testing team may not report to you directly if you are a development project manager. Quality team is definitely not going to report to you. Resourcing team is a different vertical altogether. So none of these guys are in your sphere of influence. But you still need to deliver software in time, in right quality, to the right person. So that is the biggest challenge. Influencing others in getting things delivered is the biggest challenge of a project manager. So if you have any questions, further questions, let us know. Or
Yeah, we are done with the questions now, Subhamoy. Time to close the webinar. Thanks for the insightful presentation. It was indeed a great session. I would also like to thank all the participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of the webinar will be available on techgeek.com by tomorrow. Thank you all. Thank you, Subhamoy, once again. Have a great day.
thank you very much. Thanks to all participants for participating, and thanks for all the questions. Thank you.